We are back in the black hole of real estate, and today I want to talk about something that I read the other day. Federal Housing Finance Agency. They reported something that was really interesting to me about U.S. home prices. This is your host, Ron Wojciechowski, for the black hole of real estate. And when you study housing values, housing prices, FHFA is the acronym that we'll use here. That U.S. housing prices rose 4% between the first quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025. So if you just take the first 3 months of this year compared to the first 3 months of last year, what you would find is that housing values have gone up 4%, which for some people might be a little surprising because we feel that we're in this neutral market. Some feel we're in a buyer's market, and I'm going to hold with neutral for the moment. But when we notice that prices, are up, when you compare the fourth quarter of, the end of last year, 2024, and the first quarter of this year, values are up just under 1%, 0.7%. So what they're saying is almost 1% in the quarter and 4% in the year over year when you're looking at the quarter. So it gets really interesting because, there's going to be some fluctuation based on, just certain anomalies in time of year. But when you compare the year over year and it's up 4%, that's pretty significant at a time when it's taking a lot longer for homes to sell. Buyers have more options. Homes are lingering on the market, even new construction. There was, for the first time in a long time, there was like far more supply than there was demand. And you saw it in some of the builder prices that were being reduced in order to make sales, or incentives maybe, extra closing cost help, or paying, for the lender fees. Those things are pretty prevalent that you wouldn't see in a superheated market, but we're seeing them now. Now, interestingly enough, one of the significant things is home prices rose in 49 states. So the only one that went down was Hawaii, which, so much for paradise, I guess, but there's probably a reason housing values went down in Hawaii, and it was down by 2.2%. Now, the leaders, and you wouldn't have guessed it, Rhode Island, over 11% gain, West Virginia, over 9%, Connecticut, 9%. In the top five, Ohio, over 7%, and Wyoming, also over 7%. So pretty significant, not the big areas of like the New Yorks, the California, Texas, Florida. Those weren't in the top five as far as home values increasing. And if you think about, is there a commonality between Rhode Island, West Virginia, Connecticut, Ohio, and Wyoming? I'm not sure. But what I do know is that in every state but Hawaii, home values went up when you compare the first quarter of this year to the first quarter of last year. It's pretty significant. Housing values also, they mentioned, rose in almost every market. 89 of 100 is what the article said. And that the greatest increase was Newark, New Jersey. There's some other examples where prices go down to balance things out. But in general, values have gone up in the last year. So when we look at our time, what are we going to study? And what's the leading indicator for us? Well, right now, a leading indicator for many people is interest rates. It might be the inventory increasing, the number of pendings that are, homes going under contract. Those are probably on the lead edge, if you will. The lagging indicators, just when we look in the rearview mirror, where's the market been? Where is it now? And the recency of knowing that in the first quarter of this year, in a slower market, by all accounts, it feels slower. And I think what we need to realize is last year was slower as well. But we're feeling it more right now because last year we had all these distractions. How many things were going on with a whole year of elections and votes and this and that and all these economic things. And now that those are, out of the way, so to speak, or at least in many people's minds, now we're really looking at the real estate piece again. It's like, okay, we got the election out of the way, let's move. And people do that all the time. They wait till the first of the year, some arbitrary day, like, I don't want to do anything until after the first. Okay, and I don't want to do anything after the election. Okay, well, those things are gone right now. And what we're finding is that homes are still selling for a little more money than they sold for last year. And when I say a little, If you're in a market with the average price is, $350, that 4% is $14,000. Now, if you are hesitating to buy and say, I'll wait till interest rates come down, well, what if? And I'll just use the what if. If you waited a year for rates to come down, it really didn't happen. And the houses got more expensive by $14,000. So waiting cost you $14,000. And that's a way that you might look at it. I wouldn't say you have to look at it that way, but the fact is that nationwide, if homes are up 4%, then that's a number. And if the interest rates haven't gone down and they're still in that 6 or 7 range, which historically is an average normal rate, we just enjoyed super low, artificially depressed rates that were in those 2s and 3s and 4s. I don't know that we're going to get back to there. I do think that there's a chance that we get in the low 6s by the end of the year, and I still believe we'll flirt with 5.875 for a minute, but I think at the end of the year, 6, 6.25 is where you end up. But there's some things that will probably happen as we push through things, as we implement government policy, and if there's big beautiful bills passing and things like that. Certainly all the tariff talk, and I think eventually these things will come into existence, even though there's struggle points on both sides of the aisle that I'd rather not get into in this podcast. Let's just say that 50% of the people can't be wrong 100% of the time, and there's got to be room for some conversation in that. But when we bring it back to the housing market, I think what we're finding is that regardless of all these other things, people are still buying, people are still selling, and it costs more. So if we're in an inflationary time, which by all accounts we are, and the Fed is holding interest rates higher to fight against inflation, and that's their way of doing it, then it seems natural that home prices would go up. And once the rates come down, I think you'll find the pent-up energy of those that waited for the lower interest rates. I think there will be a surge in purchases because now the inventory levels are high enough where there's options. And when the price comes down, there's 2 ways the price comes down. And I think when most people buy cars this way, they're not necessarily looking at how much does that car cost me, $30,000, $50,000, $80,000, $100,000. They're looking at the monthly payment, realizing they might take 5, 6, 7 years to pay even more with interest, same as a mortgage on a house, but they're looking at monthly payment. And all of a sudden, even if the price goes up but the rate comes down, a lot of people will justify that cost of a house by saying, well, my monthly payment is only this now. Or I can afford that monthly payment. Or I would like to buy a home where the payment's under $2,500 or under $3,000 or under $2,000. So when they can match up a house and a payment that they like, much like when they buy a vehicle, that's when these deals are going to happen. So the lower rates will tantalize people. There's no question. And when the rates come down just a little bit more, you'll see even more people jumping in and getting pre-qualified and looking to purchase homes. And there's inventory available for them. And this is where we sometimes get it twisted. Because the listing price is higher than it might be, if a home's not selling, I would argue it's one of, 3, 4 things. Location, condition, maybe the marketing for the agent, if there is one, and then just the price. I mean, that's it. So if the price is too high to begin with, and they eventually lower the price or somebody makes an offer that's accepted, even if it's 10 or 20% below the asking price, that doesn't necessarily mean home values came down. It just meant an overpriced home finally met the market and sold for what the market is willing to pay. And that number might actually be the same or higher than it was last year. So this is where it is. Over-optimistic sales prices or listing prices are contributing to this. And when someone is studying the market of the COVID time, let's say, where the price was going up 5, 10, 20% in markets, 1 or 2% per month, we're pacing the market and pricing homes consider higher and higher and higher because the market keeps pushing higher. And at some point, listing it where they believe it's going to be becomes the wrong idea. So now those listing prices are adjusting downward. But the studies are showing right now that if home values are up 4% nationwide, then even at a lower sales price compared to the listing price, that list price to sales price ratio, homes are still costing more money by 4%. And I think that's what we want to look at. It doesn't matter where you start out on listing price. It matters where you end up on sales price. And right now, FHFA is telling us that prices are up 4% nationwide first quarter this year compared to first quarter of last year. And at 49 out of 50 states saw an increase in value. So sorry, Hawaii, you're the only one that went down, but everybody else seems to be doing okay. So there's no lost equity on the part of sellers. There's a little bit of a more expensive part for the buyers. And that's what I have to talk about today, is that home values are up, inventory is up, rates are up, and it doesn't always mean that, like the balance being, oh, gee, if the rates go up, the price comes down. That's not what it is at all. I'd look for payment. I think most people are going to see when the mortgage payments come lower because of lower interest rates, people will justify paying a little bit more this year. So if they end up paying 5% more when they buy in the summer than compared to like last year, a little lower rate is going to make that a little bit easier and better for them to move forward with. Just like everything else, inflation has crept in, and I think people can justify it. I think they're conditioned to it at this point. All right. If you got anything that you want to add to this, drop a comment below. You absolutely got to subscribe right now. I'm excited because we see the listenership going up consistently over time, and the downloads are continuous. I appreciate that. So share it with a friend, subscribe, drop me a comment, and let me know what you want to hear about the real estate market on our upcoming podcast. This is your host, Ron Wysakarski, for the Black Hole of Real Estate.